How is it going, guys? It's Eclipse here and welcome back to today's video where we look at a brand new vehicle that Wargaming are putting into the game, as well as the update news for the final week of the season, of course, coming on Tuesday. So we have another 9 days left, if you include today, to be able to complete the season. And if you haven't been keeping up with the channel so far, and of course the gameplay that we've been doing, we've covered pretty much all of the tanks that you could have got this season with the season pass. So if you're wondering about whether or not you should actually spend any gold to finally complete the last couple, if you don't think you're going to be able to do it, maybe it'd be worth watching those videos. Or if you're wondering how you can actually play them if you've picked them up. Usually I would not recommend actually spending the gold to pick up a tank from the season pass unless maybe you're within 500 or 1,000 gold of being able to get to rank 100, for example, using the skips. But without further ado, we're going to jump in to this new tank, which is the Object 477A Malo or Molot, or you know what? I have no idea. You guys will probably know in the comment section down below. So if you do know, let me know in the comment section as to how you actually pronounce this. I would say it's Malo, but yeah, that's my best guess. Either way, based on a vehicle proposal from the Kharkiv Morozov Design Bureau, this Cold War tank destroyer is built to forge a path toward victory. That's what Wargaming say anyway. But this one comes in at the Detente era. It is era 3 of the Eastern Alliance. Essentially, it's a tank destroyer. And your enemies are about to get flat and learn more about the latest Cold War Devastator, which was inspired by a project developed by the Ukraine-based KMDB. Gameplay tips: the real-life codename was Malo, translate as Hammer. It's an appropriate name with its 152mm cannon boasting 760 alpha at your disposal. But we'll get into the stats right now, since this is probably one of the more important things about the tank. We want to know how it's going to usually play within the game. So first things first, the silver bonus is 65%, making it one of the highest silver bonuses that you'll be able to get at the era, and in fact in the game. 65% is usually the pinnacle. I believe only a few tanks have higher, and they are usually the World War II tanks, which actually earn you less silver per game than this one will. But that is down to the fact that Cold War premiums will earn you more silver because there's just more silver within the economy of Cold War. So if you're after a pure silver bonus tank that's going to be able to grind you silver, then this might be the one. And there's a few reasons for that we'll get into in a second. But ultimately, this tank is a tank destroyer. It's got 3,750 hit points, which is okay for Era 3. Power to weight of 24.5. Top speed is 75 kilometers an hour, so it's a very fast one. Hull traverse, you've got 64 total, including the turret traverse as well, when you combine them both together. And that allows you to basically turn relatively quickly. Gun depression 6 degrees, so it's not the best in the world, but it's still not awful. 14 degrees of elevation is lackluster to a degree. It's going to be limiting if you're, trying to fight on the bottom of a slope, for example, and you're seeing someone on a slight cliff or something above you. But it's workable. Your limit, so this is how much you can move to the left and to the right with this vehicle. It's 70 degrees, which means you have 140 degrees of spread where you can actually turn your turret within. And of course, that's pretty decent for a non-turreted tank. It's not like it has a turret, but it has your limit, so your turret can't turn all the way around, is what I mean. So it's much better than if you had a non-turreted tank for sure. But main thing with this tank, 152mm main armament with 900 penetration. And like I said, with the silver bonus, because this tank has fantastic standard rounds, which are APFSDS, you essentially are going to be able to basically go straight through a lot of the tanks in the game. Heat rounds are usually pretty bad in Era 3 because everything has spaced, whereas these premium APCR rounds, essentially, they're the same sort of thing but for the Cold War mode. Armor piercing, fin stabilized, depleting sabot or discarding sabot, I think it is. I think someone actually highlighted that in one of the previous videos, so thank you very much. 1980 meters a second is ridiculous, so it's super fast, which makes this thing very good at being able to snipe. 0.35 accuracy is fantastic, especially when you start putting on all of the perks and the equipment and crew skills and whatever you want to put on this thing. it's going to get very good. 760 damage is fantastic as well, and you've also got a reload of 12.6 seconds, meaning you've got a rate of fire of 4.76 and a damage per minute of 3.6 thousand. Now, when you start putting on the boost, this is going to get much bigger, and you're going to be able to really rip apart a lot of the opponents with that 760 alpha. And if that wasn't enough, because this tank has a 30mm 2A42 autocannon, this is much like the Forad, if you've played that, the Era 2 tank, a rate of fire 265 rounds a minute with 15 damage per shell, 100 penetration. So it can pen things, especially if you get from behind. And there is a image of this tank with this machine gun on the top, so it looks really cool as to how it actually plays in the game. And that means that you're going to be able to essentially just plow out a ton of rounds with this thing. I mean, it's almost 10 rounds per second with the autoloader, or autocannon, I should say. And then you can swap back to your main gun, fire that, then swap back to the autocannon and just keep firing that over and over and over again. And with the premium rounds of 170 pen, you could probably pen the majority of tanks from the rear. And of course, if you get lucky in the side, or you're fighting some of the lightly armored tanks in the Era. But of course, that is down to your own personal preference, whether you even want to use the autocannon. I quite like the fact that these tanks have them on. It gives it something a little bit different and something to try out. And of course, this tank is going to be quite nice for that. And the view range, 505 meters, is decent base. Obviously, if you start putting on advanced optics, you're going to boost that up to like 560. Plus, you start adding on loads of different extra things with your crew skills and stuff like that. You could probably get it up to like 600 meters view range, which is amazing. And yeah, overall, looks like a very, very interesting tank, and I think it's going to play quite decently. And I think a lot of people have this this thing with the armor, because although it looks like it doesn't get any armor, it actually gets this weird space plate that goes over the front of the hull armor on the upper plate, and of course this area here, and you've got this really thin strip of lower plate that can be penned, and then underneath that you've got more spaced armor. The sides are all spaced armor, the turret is all spaced armor with essentially some pretty weak areas which can be penned in the side from, but it's going to be difficult to actually hit it. It's mainly all gun, to be honest, which of course doesn't count as a hitbox on World of Tanks, so you're not going to be able to do anything if you hit the gun with this thing other than maybe break it. But overall, it looks like a fantastic tank, and I think it's going to be a very interesting one, that's for sure, to try out in the game. And of course, this is what it looks like, and as you've seen in the thumbnail, this is what it looks like. But how much will it cost you? Because this is probably one of the most important things, and this one is not cheap. I am not going to lie. The base version of the tank is 15,900 gold, so this has to be one of the most expensive premium tanks you could ever buy. And I believe that that is with the 30% discount added onto it. So this thing is going to be like 20,000 gold if you want to buy it normally, which is very expensive. So for the majority of people, I don't think this is the way to go. It's very expensive. If you want a tank that's going to earn you silver purely, then yeah, you can definitely pick some Era 2 premiums with 50% sale on and pick them up for a lot cheaper than this one will. And in fact, you could probably get 2 premium tanks for Cold War for that same price if you buy a bundle with 50% off in Era 2. And so it's really down to you as to whether you want to spend your money on this. This is about £50 or something like that, or like £45 maybe. Being more realistic, I think 12,000 gold is like £37 or something like that. It's a weird number, and of course that will cost you what, the equivalent of about $60 or $50 or something like that when you consider the 15,000 gold is actually going to cost. And then as soon as you start adding on all of the additional extras, this thing goes up crazy high, and you've got 17,400 for the top bundle, which is called the Ultimate Bundle. Really makes you want to buy it, doesn't it? But unfortunately it is never usually worth the money, because of the fact that they basically convert the silver cost of the advanced optics, gun lane drive and improved ventilation into gold, and that is what they are pricing each one of these off, which adds to the sale, as along with the hero skin that you can get for the tank, which I'm assuming is shown on some of these clips. It doesn't even look like they've actually put the skin on this for some reason, but it does have a skin. You can get it on there. I wonder if it's this camo net and all of these boxes add on as the skin. But yeah, it looks like a very interesting tank. I'm kind of interested to see how it'll play. We'll do a full tank review for you guys when it does drop on Tuesday, so you guys can stay up to date with this vehicle and decide whether you want to purchase it there. I would hold off for the minute, considering how expensive it is, till you start seeing reviews from various different people, not just myself, but if you want to watch someone else who plays more dedicated Cold War content, then I highly recommend you go and check out Ricky Tiki Tave, who is literally just a Cold War YouTuber essentially. Does cover World War II as well, which is absolutely fantastic, but mainly focused on Cold War as well. Obviously I cover both, but primarily World War II, since we are trying to get all of the tanks finished up on World War II, and then we'll start grinding through the Cold War ones. But moving on, we do have another extra couple of bits of information for next week, and let's jump over to the Discord for World of Tanks, and you can see this is the news article, or at least a overview of what they covered in the news. And first things first, next week we have name your price, pick your multiplier, cannot be changed once picked, and this is essentially the name your price challenge. You get it in your challenges tab, you click on the one that you want, you can choose between like a, I believe it's like a 1.5 times XP boost. You have to get essentially so complete one task to get a 1.25 times multiplier for silver and tank XP. Complete 2 of them for 1.5, and then complete 3 for ×2. And so this is essentially what you have to do. You just complete tasks, you get better bonuses. And then for Commander XP, because it's more valuable, I guess, or it's less valuable than XP and silver, then essentially they have a increased multiplier, and so you get 1.5 times with the first task, 2 with the second, and then 3 with the third, which is essentially what they do. So it's a good time to actually grind some of the tanks that you want to get, and of course you can pick whichever one you want to do as well. So whether you want to get silver or whether you want to grind tanks, you can pick based on that, or if you want to train up a crew, then yeah, you can pick the crew XP, but usually people will pick the silver or the tank XP. Anyway, moving on, we then had the Object 477. They gave a few more bits of information about it. It did actually not have the initial 70 degrees of yaw limit. I believe it had just a non-tank hull locked originally, but apparently it's went through rounds of super testing and now includes the following. So it does have that yaw limit, and it's got the big gun. The frontal armor is near impenetrable thanks to the extreme angles and multiple layers of armor. You will want to keep your front pointed towards the enemy to have the most protection, and then secondary 30mm autocannon for taking out lightly armoured vehicles, like the light tanks for example. And they did say it's the last week of War Heroes season, so make sure to complete it, and then you will be able to get yourself that one step closer to getting the Calliope, which is something that you can get for completing, I believe, 6 seasons in a row. We'll get it for free, which is the Sherman with the missile launchers on the top for World War II. So yeah, it looks interesting. I'm wondering how broken it's going to be. Hopefully it doesn't affect all too much in World War II, but yeah, we'll see how it goes, and of course review it when it comes out. But moving on to one of the more interesting things from my point of view, which is the Q&A. Hopefully this is interesting for you as well, since we get some questions that are asked to the developers of the game, and they answer them and tell us what sort of things they're looking to improve. And the first one is, can you return Abbey and Mountain Pass to map rotation for higher tiers? Over time we heard from players that had concerns that they shouldn't see the tier 10 range, and they were unbalanced, and we checked the game times and we did see some issues with that. Our level designer did take a look at some maps, and next season you will see some maps changing around a bit in the high tiers and Cold War, but to answer your question, Mountain Pass is coming back to high tiers, and our map designer is looking at Abbey to see if we can squeeze that in too. I have no idea why Abbey and Mountain Pass aren't in there. It works perfectly fine on PC. I don't think there's any problems with Abbey being particularly anything different in World War II, so yeah, not entirely sure why they aren't in there. But is it possible to remove the map ping limit in custom games? We could talk with engineering, and if it's an easy enough thing to do, then it can be done, but it was very low priority. Now, it's super annoying that we only get to ping twice after you get taken out in just a normal game. So it would be really, really beneficial if, for example, you get to ping twice every minute. so that you can help your team out, give them a bit of advice, because we don't even have a chat option in the console version of the game. Of course, PC have a chat option, which is really helpful. And you can directly ping the exact location of where you think the opponent is. You just can't spam it, and they don't seem to have too much of a problem with people spamming all of the time. So I think that would be very, very beneficial to have the ability to ping multiple times as opposed to just the once. Can we get more city maps in Cold War? Stay tuned for next season, as Cold War is getting a bit more urban map love. So, interesting. Looks like we'll have some more urban maps. Could the Lerva get an alpha buff to 360? Lerva is sitting on a 51% win rate. And we have been looking at the damage, and it's dealing around 100 to 200 more damage than other tier 8 heavies, and there doesn't seem to be a need to buff it. Perfectly fine. I don't think the Lerva is particularly underpowered, and I don't think it's particularly overpowered, so I think it's in a decent spot myself. Could we potentially see the IS-7 and Chieftain Mark 6 in Cold War? Chieftain Mark 6 is already in Cold War, and the IS-7, there is some conversations and plans for it sometime in the future, so stay tuned. I assume when they start bringing in more of the Soviet heavy tanks at the low tiers, maybe they'll start introducing a few more kind of concepts and stuff that they had back in the day at the kind of era 1 age of Cold War, as opposed to the older ones, because they do have some of the newer Soviet and, of course, Russian tanks in the game, or Eastern tanks, I should say. Is it possible for some old school World War II maps to have smaller and bigger versions? This has been an ongoing conversation, and our level designer has been doing some work on how we could apply these things. We're actively looking at Cold War maps and seeing if there's any map border changes that we can take into effect. So this would be good. I think it'd be nice to have a bigger and smaller version of maps, as long as they don't get completely trashed, and that the level design is actually decent, and that it's not just we wanted to save time and that's the only reason we've done it, and it's actually terrible. So fingers crossed that isn't going to be the case if they do decide to do it, and it's actually a decent change. Can we get Fog of War on Karelia in Cold War? We know there are spawn point issues on Karelia in Cold War, and do expect that next season we have changed spawn points. But with the Fog of War, we are still having talks about this, and we cannot promise any dates at this time. So Karelia is a horrible one for Cold War. Essentially, straight off the bat, you can see the opponent's team literally across the map. Like, it's terrible. I don't quite know why they ever did it. They should have probably done it in a different way, such that you spawn either side and you can't see each other. I mean, that would have been the better option. Do you have any plans on removing the new player map restrictions affecting other players? We are currently working on a new player matchmaker for X number of battles. New players will only match with other new players. This is something we will look into doing soon, but it won't be next season. So that's fine. When will Komarin, South Coast, Sacred Valley, Province, Ensk and Mittengard be back? Not giving any dates, but yes, Komarin and Ensk are being actively worked on, and Province is also being looked at. South Coast and Sacred Valley, unfortunately, these won't be touched, and they are not part of our map update plan, as these maps were not well liked and the balance rates were not great. The final map you mentioned, Mittengard, this was never on World of Tanks console, but it could come to the game one day. South Coast and Sacred Valley not appearing to come back, and I didn't actually mind South Coast. I thought it wasn't actually a particularly bad map. A lot of people didn't like it. They did make an alternative version of South Coast, which was like a skinned version. I can't remember what they called it, but it was essentially just the same map, just skinned with various different things. Like we have Airfield, and we've also got what's it called? Oh, I'm kicking myself. You know the one. It's essentially just a jungle version of Airfield. I can't believe I actually don't know what that is. Anyway, hopefully you'll leave it in the comment section and berate me for not remembering Airfield's skinned version. Can you please remove Encounter mode from Malinovka? Encounter or Malinovka is very well balanced with a 50.53% win rate at mid tiers and 50.2% at higher tiers, so we don't see a reason to pull it out. Encounter was such an annoying mode on Malinovka previously because of the fact that they put the cap circle in a place where you definitely couldn't cap. It was literally in the middle of the open field. You had to essentially go straight in front of the entire cliff and you would get taken out. Now, it's not so bad. And before, you had to push up the hill with all of the campers on the hill that are literally sat there waiting for you to push. If you push, you get spotted, you get taken out by about 20 people. Or what seems like 20 people. Obviously there's only 15 on the enemy team, but you get my drift. Essentially you're just getting farmed as you're trying to cross up. So it had a terrible, and I mean absolute horrendous kind of win ratio difference for the defenders versus the attackers, where the defenders literally just ended up winning on that map. So yeah, horrible before. Now not so bad. I don't have any problems with it. Can we get the option to add bots to custom games? We would not do this as a permanent feature, as there would be concerns with the amount of arena creations, and that would create more load on the server memory, and we would like to avoid this. So we could add bots for tournaments and clan battles in some way, which is perfectly fine. Can the E100 get a buff? Interestingly, this tank and several others will be getting buffed next season. More details next week. So it looks like we're going to have a new Tanks Reforged next week. So I'll make sure to cover that for you. So stay tuned on the channel for that. And when will the Weasel be available again? It's not likely to be available till next year, but it could be available in some sale events. It's not a promise, but we'll keep an eye on it and if we should release the Weasel. So yeah, I personally do not think that they should ever release the Weasel again, but you know, they probably will. It's Wargaming and they'll probably charge you an arm and a leg for it. So yeah, good. Love it entirely. Lovely voice crack as well. Would you ever do Prime rewards again? This isn't something that we're doing at the moment, unfortunately. This was something they did in the past. You could get yourself an exclusive kind of skin that is Elite Amethyst, I think it was, which is essentially just a skin that you can put on your tank. I still have them in the game, and I didn't use them because back in the day, I don't know, I just didn't use it. And of course, once you use it, you don't get another one. So I'm just keeping it on the account as a little trophy for being around when the Prime rewards were available. So yeah, I mean, it's there in the game. When will we have the Ash the Cat Commander back on sale? October is right around the corner, so you could bet that Ash the Cat will be making a return. Oh, interesting. So you can get Ash the Cat on in the game if you're interested. But there we go. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what's coming next season. Of course, this being the tank that is coming next week. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the new season news, and I will keep you updated with that. Let me know what you think of the new vehicle, and also let me know what you thought of the answers from the Wargaming developers, and of course during the Wargaming live stream that happened last Friday. So let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know if you want to see anything in particular on the channel, and hopefully I will see you in tomorrow's video, and I'll catch you there. Goodbye.